All right, Brian, in part three of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we are talking about Notre Dame's rooting guide for this weekend. And there's a lot of action in college football. And yes, while I am still, and while Brian is still confident that Notre Dame does make the playoffs, there is still a little bit of scoreboard watching and things that will either help Notre Dame's resume or kind of ding Notre Dame's resume, depending on what happens this weekend. Like we've done here the last couple of weeks, we're going to start with Notre Dame's opponents. And then we're going to talk about games at a national level. And then part four of today's show, we're going to wrap all that up and preview three games that are happening on Friday in rivalry week. You weren't kidding. That's a tongue twister. And I could not say it 5 times in a row, even if I wanted to. But, Brian, let's talk about some of the Notre Dame opponent games. And thankfully, it is holiday weekend and holiday week. And so there's going to be college football on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the first game that's going to impact Notre Dame's resume, Navy, the midshipmen, travel to play Memphis, 7:30 p.m. on ESPN. Right now, Memphis is favored by 4.5 points. The over-under is set at 57.5 on FanDuel.
Yeah, this is a big one, obviously, for Notre Dame. Navy still has an opportunity to play in the AAC championship. They need some things to kind of go their way. And this is obviously one of them. They've got to win. If they don't beat Memphis, then they're out of the conversation. So, when you look at, I would say I would put a couple things in with this one as far as a rooting guide. But first and foremost, just Navy getting to 9-2 helps Notre Dame. I mean, it does. Navy getting to 9-2 and beating a good 8-3 Memphis team on the road, a Memphis team that has a win over an SEC team, that helps Notre Dame's resume. That helps their strength of schedule, just flat out. End of sentence, end of story. If Navy loses, it hurts Notre Dame's strength of schedule a little bit, but not a ton. So it's not like it's oh crap, your playoff hopes are hanging on Navy beating Memphis. But it helps, and every little bit helps. But even more so, what you want to happen is you want Navy to win and beat Memphis. And then the other thing that you want to happen is you want there to be a little bit of chaos in the American. You want one of two things to happen. You either want Temple to beat North Texas at North Texas, now that their coach is leaving, or you want Charlotte to beat Tulane at Tulane. The game to watch is the Temple at North Texas one. Charlotte ain't beating Tulane. I'm sorry, it ain't happening.
No.
But you hope Temple's a scrappy team, and Casey Keeler's done a pretty solid job there this year, and they've got a couple good wins on their resume. They got some help last week. East Carolina lost last week, which knocked one of those teams out. And if Navy, Tulane, and North Texas all tie, I think that Navy is out. Because they would have, that right now, let me just pull it up and see if I can pull this up. So basically what Navy needs to happen let me see if I can find it. So let me find the American. So North Texas has the head-to-head tiebreaker over Navy. After head-to-head, the first tiebreaker is CFB ranking, and only Tulane has it in the last week. And so if they end up adding a second team in there, it would be North Texas, not Navy. The next tiebreaker after CFP ranking is composite of various computer rankings with 1 week still to go. That composite currently puts the teams in the following pecking order: North Texas, South Florida, Tulane, and Navy. So every one of the tiebreakers is going against Navy, so they need one of those two teams to lose.
Makes sense.
And it doesn't matter which one. The only way the North Texas tiebreaker mattered is if North Texas and Navy were tied for 2. There's only 3 one-loss teams left. If one of those two teams loses, it's Navy and whoever else. And the odds of Charlotte upsetting Tulane are not strong. So it'll be tough. But hey, you can always root for it to happen.
You can always root for it to happen. Next game that we're going to be rooting for, we're taking a trip over to Friday night. Boise State is on the road against Utah State, 4:30 on CBS. The Broncos are favored by 3.5 points. The over-under is set at 55.5. Boise State Broncos fans this weekend, Brian. Is this just simply put forward just the resume? The way that I look at this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, regardless of like whether they win or lose, this will still be viewed as just a quality win. Boise State beating Utah State won't then jump them into the top 25.
No.
So it would stay a quality win. It would just look a little better if they beat Utah State.
And it would help the overall strength of schedule metric a little bit if they jump up to 4-0 or 8-4. Yeah.
Cool.
That's it. That's all. Don't need to spend a lot of time on that one.
Right on. Well, let's dive into the Saturday slate. And this one is a big one. First one, number 12, Miami on the road against number 22, Pitt. You can watch that on ABC at noon. Currently, the Hurricanes are favored by 6.5 points. The over-under is set at 49.5 by our friends over at FanDuel.
Yeah, this what are your thoughts on this one, Trevor? I have a lot of thoughts on this, but I'm going to allow you to go first. I always dominate this conversation. I want to let somebody else kind of have this because I have a lot to say about this one.
Yeah, man. I mean, first and foremost, we can just get the obvious out of the way. A win here for Pitt would do wonders for Notre Dame.
Correct.
I mean, first and foremost, these are like opponents for Notre Dame and Miami. We already know what happened with NC State. I think Miami beat them by 5 more points than what Notre Dame did. Then we obviously have the Syracuse game to compare. Miami won by 28. Notre Dame won by 63. And then a couple weeks ago, Notre Dame beat Pitt by 22, really 28 points, but it was in actuality 22 points. And they played at Pitt. And so that's another common piece to this is Miami is also playing in Pittsburgh. And a win here for the Panthers would be huge for them. Would also be huge for Notre Dame's resume. I believe this is going to be one of the games that we take an actual deep dive into. No, excuse me. We're doing that right now. So number 12.
Vince
you guys are doing that
Friday. Correct. But so on any of these games that you won't be previewing on our Friday show, feel free to give your prediction, give a little bit more into it if you'd like in these, because you and I are going to focus on the Friday games.
Right on.
But so basically it's like, do you want Notre Dame's resume to be boosted by one of their quality wins, or do you want it to be boosted by one of their quality losses? And just looking at it, the bare minimum, Pitt winning helps boost one of their quality wins. And that's more important. And Miami's still going to be ranked, so you're going to still have a quality loss, but you're now going to have that second really quality win. And Pitt jumps into the top 20. Now you have 2 top 20 wins. That's good for the resume. Also, it drops out a team that some people think is in contention with Notre Dame. I don't feel that way. I don't. I mean, I think the committee made it very clear last night. The only thing that you don't want to happen in this game is you don't want Miami to beat Pitt way more convincingly than Notre Dame did. That's the only thing that I think couldn't, if they go out and beat Pitt by 40, in a legit 40, not like they piled 24 points on in the fourth quarter with some things that go their way, legitimately pound Pitt. That could be a thing that the committee looks at and says, listen, we saw these two teams play this team 2 weeks apart, and Miami was way better in that game than Notre Dame. But what does that look like? The committee's going to view that as a 37-9 game, basically. Let's be honest about that. So if Notre Dame wins by 22 and Pitt wins by 29 because Miami pours a touchdown off the end of the game, I don't think that moves the needle, because they're going to be garbage touchdowns don't matter. It was a 22-point game for you, and it was a 28-point game for them. I don't think that will matter as much. That's all that you need to have happen. Now, if it's a 4-quarter game and Miami wins in a close 4-quarter game, that helps Notre Dame. That shuts up any of the conversation about, it won't shut up Miami fans because they're going to be head to head because that's all we got. I put a graphic out today that had 17 things, and the guy's like, you're just picking and choosing criteria that works for Notre Dame. No, I literally put every bit of criteria that the committee looks at. I'm sorry that hurt you. I'm not picking and choosing anything. I'm literally putting all the criteria that the committee looks at and saying, now look at it. I think Notre Dame has the advantage in 11. Pitt and Miami has the advantage in 6. Miami head-to-head is big, but all the other advantages for Miami are minute. They're 6, Notre Dame's 8 kind of thing, but Notre Dame dominates Miami in a bunch of categories. And they just, but head-to-head, okay, but head-to-head, it's one thing. And I'll pull this up right here from Ant VR. He says, I think the CFB professor analysis you retweeted, BD, is super informative. I actually feel a lot better about Notre Dame's outlook after reading. That's where a lot of my data comes from, because he actually, unlike a lot of these clickbait people, this is Adam McClintock. If you guys are not subscribed to him on Twitter, do so. And if you have the extra change in your pocket to sign up for his membership, around this time of the year, do so. But he uses the computer formula. He uses the formulas that the committee looks at. So when he does strength of schedule, he literally takes the committee's formula that they stayed in 2014 and haven't changed. He looks at their strength of record, their game control, all those things that the committee looks at. He takes in their criteria, their data, not. And by the way, Adam McClintock is got his own Substack thing. If you're not on Twitter, you can go find his page. Actually, let me pull it up here real quick because I like shouting out people that do good work, and Adam does good work. So I'm actually going to pull up his page real quick, his Substack, and I'll actually put it for those of you that aren't on Twitter. I'll actually put a link to his Patreon page here in the thing, so you don't have to go try to find it on Twitter. So let me give that to you. It's right there. So there you go. So it's Adam McClintock. So I just put a link to his Patreon page. So if you're not on Twitter, don't find him on Twitter. That's his Patreon page. But they actually look at the committee's data. They have a formula that pump all the data in, and they get out what the committee's looking at. And they've nailed the rankings every week. They nailed Notre Dame being ahead of Alabama, and just like they've nailed it all because he actually looks at what the committee looks at. So really good stuff there. But, I just think there's not a lot of things that Miami has going for them in the matchup against Notre Dame, except potentially a dominant win over Miami. But if it's a close 4-quarter game, it's not going to do it. It's not going to do it. So if you're a Miami fan, let's just have this conversation real quick. Go ahead. Did you have something else you wanted to add to this game?
No,
so
I think
you're
I
Notre
was
Dame
just
fan, Miami winning is the ideal thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Pitt winning is the ideal thing. I don't care if it's by a point. Now, for my own personal feels, I would love it if Pitt beats Miami the way that they beat Georgia Tech last week. That would make me feel so much better. But at the end of the day, I don't care if it's a 10-9 game and they kick it at the end of the game. I don't care. Just win the game. But at the end of the day, if it's just a close game for 4 quarters, that's all that Notre Dame really needs. But if you're a Miami fan, and this is the point I tried to make, and shockingly, the point went way over their heads because they're just emotional and have no ability to reason whatsoever. You should be more mad about being ranked behind Alabama than you should be Notre Dame. The problem for Miami fans, here's really ultimately why they have a problem with the data I put out. Because they can't comprehend beyond the basic stuff. They can't comprehend beyond head-to-head. They have no ability to reason beyond head-to-head. But if you look at the data, Miami does not match up well with Alabama in top 25 wins or quality wins. But their game control is better than Alabama's. If you look at offensive metrics, they split 2-2 with Alabama. Alabama has the edge in relative scoring offense, relative total offense. But Miami has a pretty significant advantage in points per play and points per yard. If you look at defense, Miami's ahead of Alabama in all 4 defensive categories, 6-12, 5-10, 7-21, and 8-21. So close in 2 of them, the relative scoring and relative offense, they're close. Actually, let me just pull this up, Trev. I'm just probably make it a lot easier for people to look at if I just pull the stupid thing up, wouldn't it? All right, so this is the graphic I put together. This is all the committee's data. All of this is committee data. So if you look at this, this is what I was talking about down here. Defensively, so offensively, Bama has the edge in these 2 categories, and then Miami has the edge in these 2 categories. This is relative scoring offense, relative total offense, points per play, points per yard. Miami has the edge in those, and it's close. Defensively, down here, relative scoring and relative total, Miami is ahead, but they're both very good. But down here at points per play and points per yard, Miami is significantly ahead. Then you get down here, relative scoring differential, Miami's ahead of Alabama. And then average starting field position, Miami's way ahead of Alabama. So if you look at all these metrics, Alabama has the edge in top 25 wins and quality wins. They have the advantage in strength of schedule, strength of record. Miami has the edge in game control. Bama has 2 advantages on offense. Miami has 3. So now we're 6-3. Then you get the defense, and this is where it changes. The game changes. So it's 6-3 at Bama advantage. Then you get the defense. Miami has all 4 categories. Now it's 7-6. Then you get the relative scoring and average starting field position. Now all of a sudden, Miami has the edge in 3 more categories than Bama does. If they were willing to take 5 minutes to be objective and and intellectually honest and have any intellectual curiosity whatsoever and say, okay, this is what Driscoll's saying is true of what the committee looks at. We don't have to pass Notre Dame to get in the playoffs, morons. You just have to pass Bama. And you have a way better case than you do, because in the matchups we talk, and then there is no head-to-head. In the Notre Dame advantage, Notre Dame has more top 25 wins. They have better losses. Miami has better losses than Alabama, I would argue, because one of Miami's losses is number 20-something, and Bama lost to number 8. It's a slight advantage, but I'm sorry. Louisville's a way better loss than frickin' Florida State, a team that Miami beat. And so Notre Dame has the advantage over Miami in top 25 wins. Miami has the advantage in head-to-head. Notre Dame has the advantage in quality wins. Notre Dame has a better strength of schedule, strength of record, game control. They're ahead in all 4 offensive categories. So now we're talking 9-1. Bama has the edge in all 4, Miami has the edge in all 4 defensive categories. So now we're talking 9-5. And then Notre Dame has and those are all minor advantages, by the way, 7-6, 9-5, 9-7, 11-8. And then Notre Dame has the better relative scoring differential and the average bet in its starting field position differential. So that's a Notre Dame 11, Miami 5. You know what I mean? Like, you have more than Bama. If you were smart, that's the argument you'd be making. If the ACC didn't have morons in their leadership position, they'd have spent the last 2 weeks comparing Miami's resume to Alabama's using real committee metrics, not the superficial head-to-head top 25 wins, because the SEC is always going to have more top 25 wins because there's an SEC bias that puts more teams in the top 25. But all those other data points below that are all advantage Miami. And if you guys weren't such babies, you'd look at this data instead of saying, yeah, but head to head, and be like, dude, actually make a real computer model argument, a real committee criteria argument. And you could say, we should be ahead of Alabama. And now you're in the playoffs, you bunch of crybabies. But you're not willing to go past the surface level because either A, you're lazy, or B, you're smart, or C, all of the above. And you're incapable of understanding what the committee actually looks at. So it's just, it's frustrating, to be honest with you, Trevor. It's very frustrating. And then you compare Notre Dame and Alabama, and it's not close. Alabama has more top 25 wins. Notre Dame has the same number of quality wins. Alabama has a better strength of schedule. Alabama has a better strength of record. Notre Dame has a better game control. Notre Dame has the advantage in all 4 offensive categories over Alabama. 3 of the 4 categories. Then you get the defense, and Notre Dame is ahead in all 4. That's 8-4. And then Notre Dame has a big advantage in the other 2. Notre Dame's like 10-4 over Alabama with a tie in total quality wins. Not even close. Like, if you actually look at the data, it's not even close. Matter of fact, if you look at the data, Miami has a better case to be ranked closer to Notre Dame than Alabama does.
Sure.
Because you include the head-to-head. And the quality wins is any team that's over 500. Any FBS team that's over 500 is how they look at it. Now, the other thing that Bama and Miami fans aren't taking into consideration is, according to the committee, Notre Dame is 9-2. Alabama and Miami are 8-2 because they don't count FCS wins. That's the other thing. You don't have as many wins as Notre Dame does, nor will you. So, but I didn't want to put 8-2 on there, and that would just cause people to lose their minds, and they wouldn't look at anything else. So that's what that stands for. But that's not Brian Driscoll's data. That's not Adam McClintock's data. That's Adam and John Bryce looking at what the committee is looking at, and then me taking that as a fact and just dealing with the reality of it. That's why I no longer argue that Notre Dame should be ahead of Oregon. You guys remember when the playoffs first came out, and I argued that Notre Dame should be ahead of Oregon, and I said, nope, not going to do that anymore. Why? Because of this right here. Let me pull this up here real quick. Let me go zoom to fit. Let's go here. Look at Oregon. So Notre Dame has the edge in top 25 wins and quality wins. Actually, that's not the metric. Let's go to resume 2. This is the one I wanted to pull up. But if you look at it and you compare Oregon to Notre Dame, Oregon has the edge in a lot of categories, right? I mean, they're ahead of all the, some of the computers. Notre Dame's higher in the FEI, or Oregon's higher in the FEI, Notre Dame's in the FPI. Notre Dame's higher in the Sagarin. Oregon's higher in the SP Plus. Oregon's higher in the Massey. Oregon has a better, two better offensive categories. Notre Dame has two better offensive categories. Defensively, Oregon has an advantage of 2. Notre Dame has the advantage of 2. So, it's real close when you look at those metrics. But then I go up to their 10-1, Notre Dame's 9-2, and their only loss was to a top 5 team. They beat the Miami version of who they played. You know what I mean? In Iowa and USC. Pick one. So you don't hear me make that argument anymore. Why? Because I looked at the numbers. I looked at the data. That's why. Why don't I make the argument about Oklahoma that I do Alabama? Look at the strength of schedule number. See, Alabama is they have the number 27 strength of schedule compared to Notre Dame's 44. But if you look at Oklahoma's strength of schedule, it's 12th. So, they have more advantages over Notre Dame than Alabama does, even though I think if they played on a Saturday, I think Notre Dame beat the heck out of them. So I think all of those things, to me, say you have to be willing to look at the data and have an honest conversation about what the data shows you. That's why I don't sit here and say I think Notre Dame should be ahead of Oregon and Ole Miss and Oklahoma right now. I'm not making that case. I would put Notre Dame ahead of Oklahoma, but I'm not arguing about it. Why? Because I'm looking at the metrics the committee's looking at, and based on those metrics, you can understand why Notre Dame is behind those teams. But there's not much of a case to make for Alabama or Miami other than the head-to-head, which matters. But for Miami fans, they talk, well, why do we even play those games? You guys are not making the point you think you're making. If you take you're mad at your 12 now, your entire resume is built on beating Notre Dame. You take Notre Dame off your schedule and go beat somebody that's not good, you're down past Michigan. You're down 16, 17, 18 right now because you have 0 top 25 wins. Your best win right now would be South Florida, who has 2 losses in the American. So I just wish people would just not be idiots and just take a minute, just take a breath, look at the data, and have a better understanding of the data. And here's a real cool thing. Don't lose to Louisville. And if you're Alabama, don't get beat by Florida State, who sucks. It's real simple. Real simple. But anyway, So if you're Miami, you should be saying War Eagle this weekend and stop crying about Notre Dame. Number 1, hope you can beat Pitt. Number 1. Number 2, War Eagle and go Tigers. That's what you should be saying. Is you want Oklahoma or you want Alabama to lose. And you better hope that Texas Tech wins the Big 12. So this is the thing. There's a lot of paths for Miami to make the playoffs that don't include crying about Notre Dame and trying to convince the committee to change their minds on something that they've been adamant about for now 4 weeks. So, yeah.
It's well said, man. That's extremely well said. Before we move on to the next game, I do want to give my prediction for this one just real quick since I won't get to on Friday. So,
yeah,
even though I know Miami is favored by 6.5 points by FanDuel, I have Pitt winning this one. I do. And for the simple reason of I think Carson Beck is going to throw some crucial turnovers. Now, there's been a pattern. I don't think it's a mystery that when they play a good pass defense, the defense that ranks high in interceptions, Carson Beck turns the ball over. He had 4 against Louisville. He had 2 against SMU. SMU ranks 5th in the country in interceptions gained, and Louisville ranks 19th in the country in interceptions gained. I think that the weather is going to play a factor. Not as big of a factor as I think some, they're not playing in a blizzard, but it is cold. And how I know that is I've watched USC teams that play in Southern California come and play Notre Dame when it's 40, and it just looks different. Mm-hmm. It's in the same way that Notre Dame, a handful of Notre Dame players were affected by the humidity and the weather down in South Florida when they played in week 1. So I'm also not going to pretend that also wasn't a thing. I think it was blown out of proportion. Just like I think some may, they're not going and playing Pitt in the Arctic Circle. It's just going to be cold.
What was blown out of proportion?
The weather down for Notre Dame players down in Miami. It was blown out of proportion, but it was a factor.
Yeah.
Like just
you
in
saw
the
that
same,
with guys kind of getting a little bit gassed at the end of the game and
yeah.
humidity got to them. They weren't as ready for that moment as they were last year. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but it wasn't, they didn't have to go sit in ice baths at halftime. It wasn't like in the same light that I think the way that some people talk about the weather in the Pitt Miami game, I think it's getting blown out of proportion, but it is a factor. So I Pitt winning this one in an ugly game, 24-20. Like that's,
I love it.
where
I
I have
love it. So Notre Dame on the season has 267 pressures. Pitt only has 217. So Notre Dame has 50 more pressures. Having said that, Notre Dame has a combined number of 74 hits plus sacks on a quarterback. Pitt has 83. So even though Notre Dame gets to the quarterback in a pressure situation more, Pitt actually gets to the actual quarterback more. So like hits on the quarterback. And to your point, that's the stuff that really gets to Carson Beck. So, yeah, I agree. I think that's going to be a big thing. Can Pitt get after the quarterback? Can Jimmy Scott impact the game in a way that he did not the Notre Dame game? That's going to be a big key in this game. If he can, then I think they've got a shot to do something. He was very good against Georgia Tech. He had 6 pressures against Georgia Tech. He had 4 pressures, 2 hits, and 2 sacks in the quarterback against Stanford. They're going to also need their linebackers to be impactful. Kyle Luis had 1 pressure against Notre Dame. He did not have a very good game because he had 3 tackles, 3 missed tackles against Notre Dame. He only had 2 run stops, and he gave up 3 receptions for 28 yards. Against Georgia Tech, however, he had 5 pressures, 1 sack, 1 hit on the quarterback, 9 tackles, 2 assisted tackles, no missed tackles. So they need that version of Kyle Luis against Miami.
Well, and to your point about Pitt's linebackers, I have full faith that they're going to trigger them more than what Notre Dame did with their linebackers in week 1. So they're going to be a game-changing unit for that Pitt defense. So I have the Panthers winning 24-20.
Yeah, I would love it. So, would love that if that were true. I'll give my prediction on Friday. It's a good one.
Next game is the battle for Los Angeles. UCLA at number 17 USC. It's on NBC. It's a night game kickoff. USC is favored by 21.5 points. The over-under is set at 59.5. Is this one another one of those? It's pretty straightforward. USC win here.
Yeah. It is. You want USC to win. It makes sure. I think that Notre Dame got a boost when they kept USC at 17. I think that helps Notre Dame and that helps Oregon. I think that also shows like, hey guys, USC's pretty good. The teams they've lost to are pretty good. They had the bad loss to Illinois. The committee looks at context. They had half their defense didn't play in that game, and because they had food poisoning and different things, they were a very depleted team. Still almost won that game. They gave Notre Dame a game. They gave Oregon a game. They really weren't the better team in either game, but they were competitive in both games. They pounded Michigan. They had a great win over Iowa. This is still a good USC team, and I was glad the committee recognized it as such. And of course, it helps Notre Dame. But if you're USC, you can't now have that letdown game. You can't be in your feelings because you're now out of the playoff race and you're out of the Big Ten title race and all that. You can't now go out in your last game and just kind of lay an egg against UCLA.
Yeah,
can't. You've got to go out there and handle business and finish this year on a strong note. And we're going to find out if Lincoln Riley can get his team properly motivated now that there's really nothing on the line for this game, for the season. So, a loss in this game would drop USC out of the top 25. And if Miami beats Pitt, now Notre Dame is sitting there in the last week and they have no top 25 wins. That would matter. Now, the committee would still recognize that those are teams that have been in the whole year, but that would hurt.
Yeah,
that would hurt. So you need the Trojans to win. And then the last one, Trevor, UNC at NC State.
Yeah, this one I kind of feel bad for the Tar Heels. NC State has been a very volatile team at home. They kind of look like world beaters on the road. They look like they don't want to be there. And that's true when you go back and you look at what their record has been at home versus on the road. They've beaten some big opponents at home, and then they borderline just look not competitive on the road. So that's something that Dave Dorn is going to have to figure out at some point between now and whenever next season kicks off. But it pertains to this game. Obviously, first and foremost, an NC State win here is going to be huge. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on the ACC network. NC State is currently favored by 7.5. Over-under is set at 47.5. If NC State wins, it's another just quality win for Notre Dame. It's plain and simple what this does for their resume. But I like the Wolfpack in this one because of what they play like at home, and North Carolina, as scrappy as they've looked at times down the stretch. I think they have a tall task in front of them on Saturday.
Agree. I mean, right now, I put up that graphic that had Notre Dame with 5 quality wins. One of those wins is 6-5 NC State. They lose this game, they're 6-6. Notre Dame's now without a quality win. Now, they still have more quality wins than Miami, Texas Tech, Oregon, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Utah, and Vandy. If they lose, if NC State loses, they would still have more than Miami, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Utah, and Vandy. But you're now behind Alabama, and your resume could change quite a bit. So I think that's a key, is you just want them to win. And then just overall, if all your opponents have a pretty good final weekend, like, look, 2 of your opponents are going to win. One of your opponents is guaranteed to win, and one of your opponents is guaranteed to lose, because BC and Syracuse play each other. The rest of them, you want your opponents to win. I mean, we're not talking about Texas and Texas A&M and Texas this weekend, because I don't think A&M losing impacts Notre Dame's resume at all. I think A&M is still a top 10 team. They'll finish the year 11-1, ranked 6th, 7th, or 8th, somewhere around there. And it's still a great win or loss for Notre Dame. What you don't want to have happen is then lose to Texas, get in the SEC title game, and then lose again. But at that point in time, A&M may fall behind Notre Dame, because clearly their head-to-head win won't mean as much at that point in time. You know what I mean? So, like, it's possible that A&M could still fall behind Notre Dame. And if you are going to not give Miami credit for beating Notre Dame, you're not going to give A&M credit for beating Notre Dame, although they did on the road, because Miami was more impressive in their win over Notre Dame than A&M was, in my opinion. So, that's kind of, I just don't think it matters a whole lot on this, Trev. But if they win, that's even better for Notre Dame, because they stay high. And if Pitt wins, that helps. If Boise wins, I mean, your overall strength of schedule gets a little bit of a boost if a bunch of your opponents win. And then obviously, as I mentioned, with them winning their last game, that would also mean that they would remain a 5th quality win. They're the only potential quality win that's on the brink of not being a quality win with the loss this weekend. USC will remain a quality win. Navy will remain a quality win no matter what happens their last game. Boise remains a quality win. Trying to think of what the other so it's Pitt would remain, USC would remain, Boise would remain, Navy would remain. This is the only one that's on the verge of not being a quality win if they lose. So you want NC State to win and handle business and be 7-5 and finish the year on a strong note, and all of a sudden they go up in the computer models a little bit and your overall resume gets better.
Plain and simple. Love it. Let's talk about some of the national. I know. Let's talk about some of the national games that are going to impact Notre Dame's schedule here, resume here, and a couple of them on Friday. And some of these we are going to take a deep dive and preview. But number 7, Ole Miss on the road against Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl. You can watch that at noon on ABC. Ole Miss is favored by 7.5. The over-under is 62.5.
You said the over-under for FanDuel was what? What was it on this one?
62.5.
What was and what's the line?
Ole Miss 7.5.
So they basically predict Ole Miss will win by about a touchdown in a high-scoring game. I could see that. I mean, look, right now, I don't think the committee is overly enamored with Ole Miss because of all the things going on right now, the extracurriculars. I don't think they love the idea of a Ole Miss team being in with the new head coach. I think that if you're the college football playoff committee, you're probably wanting Mississippi State to win this football game. Think about what that does. I kind of pointed out earlier Ole Miss's resume. It's not super strong. Ole Miss right now has 3 quality wins. They are 2-1 against top 25 teams. That's a positive. But Ole Miss is 10th and 4th in relative scoring and offense, but they're 21st in yards per play, 43rd in yards per play, they're 21st in points per play, 43rd in yards per point or points per yard, but they're in the 40s of all the defensive metrics. And their overall resume is not super strong. So their field position one is they're 64th in that field position category that I was talking about earlier. Let me find this other one that I have here. the point differential one. Ole Miss is 15th in that category. So there's a lot of things that Ole Miss isn't great at that if they get a second loss, they plummet. Worse than Bama would. And then now you don't have to worry about it. Like, you don't have to worry about what happens with their coach because your resume is now not good enough. Your whole resume right now is on beating Oklahoma. And that's okay with one loss. You get a second loss, you're falling big time. And that also helps Notre Dame. That would bump Notre Dame up to number 8, and then that would give Notre Dame protection. Or even if Notre Dame then gets passed up by, let's say, BYU runs the table, and both BYU and Texas Tech stay ahead of them. Let's say Alabama goes and wins the SEC. They jump in. Now Notre Dame falls to 10. They're still in. So Ole Miss losing the Egg Bowl on Friday would literally solve all of the angst that Notre Dame fans have about Notre Dame getting dropped out. And then maybe now, Miami jumps in and they can stop crying, and, it'd be nice, wouldn't it? So, and then I do wonder if Ole Miss gets beat by Mississippi State, that hurts Oklahoma's resume as well. Is that enough to pop Notre Dame up if Oklahoma doesn't play well? I don't think Oklahoma needs to lose on Saturday, but if they just have an ugly win, then that could do it. That could do it.
Very interesting in that one for sure. Next national game, it's also Friday night. The good old-fashioned hate rivalry. Number 4 Georgia plays Georgia Tech at a neutral site game. Georgia Tech is ranked 23rd in the country. It's at 3:30 p.m. on ABC. Georgia is 13.5-point favorites. The over/under is set at 59.5.
I'm a little torn on this one, Trevor, because I don't know if Georgia falls behind Notre Dame if they lose to Georgia Tech. But I think with Georgia Tech losing last weekend, the chances of that happening are much greater. So if you look at the FEI, for example, Notre Dame's already ahead of Georgia. If you look at Sagarin, Notre Dame is already ahead of Georgia. If you look at the Massey ratings, which I believe is also one of the old BCS ones, Georgia's at 4, Notre Dame's at 6. They lose to Georgia Tech, a team that Massey has down at number 31. That could be enough to drop them down. I'd be very curious to see kind of how that would go. If you look at some of the other numbers that I've talked about here, you look at relative scoring offense. Notre Dame is 8th in relative scoring offense. Georgia is, let's see here. Georgia would be, because I haven't actually compared their resumes in a couple days. So Georgia would be 17th. If you look at yards per relative offense, yards, Notre Dame is 19th. Georgia would be 24th. If you look at the relative numbers on defense, Notre Dame is 7th. Georgia's 14th. If you look at the relative points or relative yards, Notre Dame is 9th and Georgia is 13th. So literally in all 8 of the relative scoring and all that, Notre Dame is ahead of Georgia in all of them. If you look at the field position one, or you look at the scoring differential, Notre Dame is 4th, Georgia's 9th. If you look at the FEI's field position, Notre Dame is 6th, Georgia is 28th. I just went through 10 metrics the committee uses, and Notre Dame is ahead of Georgia on all of them. So, I look at that and I'm like, if Georgia loses to a borderline top 25 team, I think that's enough for Notre Dame to go ahead of them. I do. Now, I don't think there's a snowball's chance in heck that Georgia Tech beats Georgia this weekend, but I'm just saying, if you're talking about games that happen, I think that's another game that if Georgia loses, I wasn't sure that they would fall behind Notre Dame. But when I compared their data, they're already behind Notre Dame in almost every computer model that I looked at. I think the only ones that have Georgia ahead, I believe, are the ESPN ones. Let me go look here. SP Plus has Notre Dame's 5, Georgia's 6. Let's look at the Football Power Index. Notre Dame is 3rd, Georgia's 6th. So, dude, yeah, Notre Dame is literally ahead of Georgia in every category except record, which is why Georgia deserves to be ahead. I mean, so this would give Georgia a second rank loss. I think when I look at Georgia's schedule, they have, let me go here real quick. So Georgia They have some, obviously they have win over Ole Miss, which is a very good win for them right now. They have a win over Tennessee, which would give them a top 25 win. And they have a win over Texas. So they'd be 3-2 with top 25 wins. They would have, let's see, three. They would only have three. They'd only have 3 quality wins. No, wait a minute, where's Marshall? That'd be 4. No, Marshall's 5-6. They'd only have 3 quality wins. So they have one more top 25 win than Notre Dame. They'd have fewer quality wins. So like literally the only metric they would have over Notre Dame if they lost is they have more wins over top 25 teams. But that's already been proven with Alabama that doesn't matter if the rest of it isn't there. So I thought that was a very interesting. When I looked at that, I was like, okay, that's pretty interesting, man. You know, when you look at that data, like Notre Dame kind of beats Georgia pretty soundly, but the difference is right now is the record. So let me go see what the strength of schedule difference is, because I know Georgia has a better strength of schedule than Notre Dame. Notre Dame on the metric the committee uses is, let's see here, they're 44 and Georgia is 39. So, like, where would they have the edge over Notre Dame outside of one more top 25 win? So, yeah, if Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, there's no doubt in my mind that they fall behind Notre Dame. So that'd be, I mean, if there's utter chaos this weekend, there's a chance Notre Dame could jump up to 6 or 5. I just don't think that much chaos is going to happen. Just not in 1 week. I just don't see it. But you just need like one of these, like all these games. We just need, of all the games we're going to talk about in the next 15, 20 minutes, you just need one of them to happen. That's it. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about 5 games in a row. And of all those 5 games, actually 6 out of the 7 games we're going to talk about, you just need one of them to happen.
You bump Notre Dame up, that's for sure. I mean, because as weird as it is to say, they are a spot away from hosting. I mean, I know sometimes it doesn't feel like it, but they are. They are one spot away from being able to host. And if some of these games start going that way, definitely look like it. Let's jump into the Saturday slate here. Number 5, Texas Tech is on the road at West Virginia. It's noon kickoff. Texas Tech is currently favored by 23.5 points. But the over-under is set at 53.5. So they see the Red Raiders winning this one in a big, big way, and honestly, so do I.
I agree. I think Texas Tech's going to pound West Virginia, but if West Virginia beats Texas Tech, they would fall behind Notre Dame. So if you're looking at games and your scoreboard watching, if you could ask for one colossal upset of a huge dog this weekend, that would be a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a pretty good one. I don't see it happening.
No, I don't either. Another one that I do.
My boy Rich Rod has helped me out before, though, man. Rich Rod has helped me out before, so we'll see. But I don't see it happening. Not this week.
Well, in a game that I could see happening this weekend, number 6 Oregon is on the road against Washington, a really, really tough team to beat at home. 3:30 p.m. on CBS. Oregon is currently favored by 6.5. The over-under is set at 50.5.
Mm-hmm. This is going to be an interesting game. What'd you say the spread was in this one, Trev?
Oregon's favored by a touchdown.
Okay, that means they think it's going to be a close game. If you look at the metrics that I've pointed to that we keep talking about, Notre Dame is ahead of Oregon in more categories than Oregon is ahead of Notre Dame right now. But Oregon has the better record. If Oregon drops another game, they will fall behind Notre Dame. We guarantee it based on their metrics. So, I'll pull that graph up again for people asking. So here's the graph. So as you see, relative scoring offense, Oregon has an advantage in those two. Notre Dame has an advantage of those two. Defensively, advantage Notre Dame, advantage Oregon, advantage Notre Dame. So it's 4-4 in those categories. If you look at the metrics I don't have on here, but you look at point differential, which the committee looks at, Notre Dame is 4th. The only 3 teams ahead of them are Indiana, Ohio State, and Texas Tech. Oregon is 6th. This is before Oregon might lose a game, right? We're talking about if Oregon – this is only if Oregon loses. If Oregon doesn't lose, the computer models are close, but Oregon's 10-1, Notre Dame's 9-2. That matters. They have a better record. And then if you look at field position value, Notre Dame is 6 and Oregon is, let's find Oregon here. They are 43rd. And then you look at the other metric, top 25 wins. Oregon has 1, Notre Dame has 2. Quality wins, Notre Dame has 5, Oregon has 4. If Oregon's is 10-2 and Notre Dame's 10-2, Notre Dame has a clear advantage in the categories here. The points, offense and defense, it's 2-2 on each side of the ball. Notre Dame has better wins. Notre Dame has better losses. And then Notre Dame would have more quality wins. Like, yeah, Notre Dame would jump ahead of Oregon. I didn't know that. I didn't know for sure that would happen. But when you punch in these numbers and you know what the committee's looking at, and then also down there too, Trevor, you see strength of schedule. Notre Dame is ahead of Oregon already. And then, of course, strength of record. Oregon has an advantage. Game control. Oregon has an advantage. But we're talking about if they lose, at least game control, they fall behind Notre Dame. So if they lose that game, Notre Dame would have a clear edge over Oregon. Right now, Oregon has the better resume. No doubt. But if they lose, they do. And as you said, this is one that's possible. I think Oregon's a better team than Washington. I think if this game was at Oregon, I think this would be a very clear double-digit win for Oregon. But as we've pointed out time and time again, playing up in Seattle, playing the Huskies on the road is not an easy thing, Trevor. So if you're a Notre Dame fan and you want some chaos to happen, this is definitely one you want to keep your eye on. And you know the one thing that sucks about the 10:30 kickoff time is how late it is and all that. But the one thing that's great about it is we get to sit and watch all this football being played all day, which is going to be awesome. So, yes, you want the Huskies to get this one done.
Yeah, you sure do. I'll give a little preview into this one as well. Consider I'm not going to be previewing this one either. This is going to be a crazy game. The story of it is going to be Washington's defense at home versus Oregon's offense. I mean, Oregon has had an extremely volatile offense so far this season, and it hasn't traveled. Like that's the interesting thing about this team, man. I mean, you go and you look at what Oregon's offense has done on the road so far this year. Put up 34 against Northwestern earlier in September. Traveled on the road against Penn State. They scored 30, needed overtime to do it. They look good against Rutgers, but then in a sloppy game against Iowa, they put up 18 points of offense and needed some heroics last second to do it. And then they put up 42 in back-to-back weeks at home against Minnesota and USC. But we're talking about a Washington defense that hasn't let an opponent score over 25 points at home. And that includes playing Ohio State. Like that includes playing Illinois at home, who has a decent offense. I mean, at home, they've held their opponents to 21, 10, 24 in a loss, 19, 25, and then 13 in their last home game against Purdue. That is going to be a major storyline in this one. Washington, for whatever reason, they just don't lose at home, man. They lost once at home, I mean, in the last 3 seasons. So that's really impressive. So I'm smelling an upset here. I said this yesterday that I thought that a lot of chaos has already happened, but I don't think it's completely done. I'm taking Washington in the upset here. I think that's the most likely one this weekend.
I love this comment by Robert Bishop. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I wasn't impressed with Washington's offense. To be fair, I only watched them against Ohio State. There's a lot of teams whose offenses don't look good when they play Ohio State. You know what I mean? It's like, I think the Georgia Tech game was eye-opening for a lot of Notre Dame fans who were like crapping on Pitt. We kept trying to tell people like this Pitt offense is legit, and then Notre Dame embarrasses them. You're like, see, they weren't that good. And then you're like, oh, maybe it is Notre Dame. Oh, Navy sucks. You beat them with their backup quarterback, and then their backup quarterback goes in the second half against South Florida, runs for 2 touchdowns to put the game away. You know, when South Florida kept coming back and he rushes for over 100 yards, outrushed Blake Horvath by over 100 yards. You know, like maybe they are that good. Alex Teska ran for a bunch of yards against South Florida, couldn't do anything against Notre Dame. Eli Heidenreich went off against South Florida, couldn't do nothing against maybe it is Notre Dame. You start to realize, no, this team's pretty good. They just look bad against really good teams like Notre Dame and Ohio State and Oregon. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. But I think Jed Fish needs a big win too. I think this is the kind of game for his tenure at Washington. You know, he's had some good wins in his tenure, over some brand names. Obviously, they beat Michigan last year, which is a brand win, but they've also had some ugly losses. You know, I think people forgave them last year for losing to Washington State and losing to Rutgers and losing to Iowa and losing to Indiana and losing to Oregon and losing to Louisville. It was year 1. You lost a bunch of your players. And now you're in year 2. You got a talented team. And you've lost to literally every good team you've played so far. And then that embarrassing loss to Wisconsin was bad look. But what does this team do coming out of that? They played 2 not very good teams. They annihilated Purdue and UCLA, 49-13 wins and 48-14 win. hopefully that is what can kind of carry the day here against Oregon at home. We'll see. I'm not as optimistic about the upset as you are, but man, I hope that you are right. But if you're a Notre Dame fan, you want the Huskies to get this one done.
Last couple national games here, Brian, on this Notre Dame rooting guide, in what is probably the most hilarious over-under that I've seen this season. LSU is on the road against number 8 Oklahoma, 3:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Oklahoma is favored by 10.5 points. The over-under is set at 36.5.
That is gross.
Yeah.
That is really gross. Like, that is 36.5.
I had to go back and look because when I was filling out the outline that you sent me, I wrote it down real quick and then I was like reviewing it before we got started. I was like, that's got to be a typo. I'm
actually looking it up to make that's the freaking spread. Wow.
How wild is that? Over under 36.5 in an LSU Oklahoma SEC matchup.
I mean, every other top 25 matchup, any game involving a top 25 team, it's 50.5, 43.5, 54.5, 49.5, 47.5, 50.5, 36.5. That one, 65.5. Guess which one that one is? SEC game, Vandy, Tennessee. 53.5, 46.5, 58.5, 52.5, 52.5, and 36.5. That is gross.
Yeah,
that is gross. Yeah.
That's gross. So apparently Vegas thinks that this game is going to set offensive football back a couple of decades. But yeah, I think the interesting thing is when you look at this matchup, as shocking as the over-under is in this one, I kind of get it. In one light, you have an Oklahoma defense that's just been absolutely shut down. And then an Oklahoma offense that's struggled to put points on the board, again, very similar to that Notre Dame 2012 reference. And then on the other side of the ball, you have an LSU offense that I think is just done with their season. They
quit.
Yeah.
They quit.
Watching them against Western Kentucky, like they've quit. And it's as fun as it is to take shots at LSU, like I get it, but Western Kentucky does not have the horses to compete with LSU inside of Tiger Stadium at nighttime. Like that is a team that just does not care. Flat out. Like
Trevor, Western Kentucky is giving up over 22 points a game this year. The week before the week before LSU only scored 13, they gave up 26 points to Middle Tennessee State. Middle Tennessee State's 2-9. Middle Tennessee State's averaging 21.6 points per game. They gave up 27 points to Louisiana Tech. Like, they gave up 20.5 points to FIU. I mean, like, they gave up 45 points to Toledo. LSU was closer to North Alabama than they were to Sam Houston State in scoring against Western Kentucky. That's so bad.
Yeah, that
is so terrible. But here's the thing. You know what, though? Since they fired Brian Kelly, that defense is back to playing really good defense.
Sure are.
And that's why I get it as well. Not only is Oklahoma could score, one of their highest outputs of the season, and they still don't cover. I mean, Oklahoma, outside of the most points Oklahoma has scored this year against a Power 4 opponent or against an FBS opponent, period. They scored 42 against Temple, 44 against Kent State. If you look at just Power 4 opponents, the most points they've scored in the game is 33 against Tennessee. That's the only game they've been in the 30s against a Power 4 opponent. And they could have match their best output of the season against a Power 4 opponent, and they still may not get over the over because I don't know that LSU can score on Oklahoma. Having said that, Oklahoma the LSU defense has been very good since Brian Kelly was fired as well. They were starting to kind of bottom out. They gave up 31 points to Vandy, 49 to Texas A&M. They held Alabama to 20. They held Arkansas to 22, and they held Western Kentucky to 152. Now, we laugh about how embarrassing it is to only score 13 points against Western Kentucky. That's a Western Kentucky offense that was scoring about 30 points a game coming into that game. So, I mean, they had scored 42, 35, 28 the 3 weeks prior. So their defense is back to playing really good football. I just don't know if they're going to need some turnovers and some, points on defense to win the game. Like LSU right now reminds me a lot. We're talking about past Notre Dame teams. LSU right now reminds me of 2007 Notre Dame, but with a way better defense. Basically, like you only reason Notre Dame beat UCLA in 2007 was because of Mo Crum had like basically a defensive touchdown and another one that they recovered inside the 10. You know what I mean? Like they weren't winning that game without the defense getting them points. And that's how I feel about LSU right now. But when it comes to the rooting guide, here's where I'm at with this game. I don't think you necessarily need Oklahoma to lose, although if they do, that's huge.
Yeah.
I just think it needs to be another ugly game and then some other things break your way. I think there's a chance that Notre Dame could jump Oklahoma without Oklahoma losing. I think the metrics are close. But I think that's going to require some other thing. Pitt beats Miami. Navy beats Memphis. Like the overall resume for Notre Dame goes up. They have an ugly game against LSU. Notre Dame destroys Stanford. It might also require like Ole Miss losing, because then what you might be able to do is Oklahoma stays at 8, and then Notre Dame goes up 7. You know what I mean? Something like that. So it's possible, but if they lose, it's even better. I just don't know if that's possible. I don't know if LSU can do enough to win.
No, I don't either, unfortunately. But, with sometimes college football will just college football. It goes one of two directions. The LSU football team and their players will just either throw their hands up in the air and say, like, let's just get this season over with, or they go into it with the mentality of like, hey, guys, let's just go ball. It's like the season's over. We're not making the playoffs. We're not going to get ranked. I mean, even if they beat Oklahoma, they're not going to get ranked, in my opinion. So, like we'll see what they do. But if it's just an ugly game, I think that's also impactful as far as the rooting guide is concerned. So I'm with you. It was just shocking to see an over-under set at 36.5. I mean, good Lord. Good Lord. Last game here, Brian, is also on Saturday for this rooting guide. Number 10, Alabama is on the road against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, traveling to Jordan-Hare Stadium. 7:30 p.m. kickoff on ABC. Alabama is currently favored by 5.5 points. The over-under is set at 46.5. A lot of Notre Dame fans will be tuned into the Iron Bowl this year.
I was shocked to see the spread was only 5.5. Shocked. Like, I was really expecting Alabama to be at least a touchdown, if not more, favorite over Auburn. But there's a couple things about Auburn, I guess, to think about. Number one is Auburn has had some good wins here down the stretch. Obviously, they destroyed Mercer last weekend. And again, we talk Mercer's an FCS team, but that's a 9-3 FCS team that I believe is in the college football playoffs, correct? Aren't they in the FCS playoffs?
Mercer? I think so.
Yeah, I thought so too. Let's go FCS. But let me go look here because they were 9-3. Where is Mercer? Or did they not make the playoffs, or did they get a bye? Let's see here. Did Mercer not make the playoffs? Wow. Let me see here. I thought because they were 9-3. But anyway, point is that's a good FCS team. They went 9-2 this year. They are. They play South Dakota State on. They play the winner of, I think, South Dakota State and Drake. So yeah, they did get a bye. I was like, that can't be right. Like, that's a good football team, man. Like, what is the FCS doing? Let me see. FCS football playoff bracket. Moral of the story, Trev, I've always been very consistent that if you play a really good FCS team, that's better than beating some G5 teams. It just is. And Mercer's a very good team. Mercer's 9-2, and that's with them losing to Auburn. They are the number 6 overall seed at the FCS level. They'll play the winner of the Drake South Dakota game. And then the winner of that game plays the winner of Montana and whoever wins between New Hampshire and South Dakota State. So, and they destroyed Mercer, absolutely destroyed Mercer. So that was a pretty good win for them this season. So their other win, they had another good win over Arkansas, going on the road and beating Arkansas. But then they have weird games like losing to Kentucky 10-3. They're a very weird team. Went on the road and beat Baylor by 2 touchdowns. And then they played Vandy very tough. I mean, I don't know that I would say that I necessarily felt like Vandy. I'm going to look up the box score because I might be misremembering this game, but I never felt like Auburn was going to win. But like, I mean, it took them in overtime. I just kind of felt like the whole time I'm watching it, like Auburn's going to do something to lose, but it's a weird game. Like it went to overtime. I just felt like they're going to lose it. I think it went to overtime, didn't it? But I mean, you took them down to the wire. You played them tough. You know, Ashton Daniels passed for a bunch of yards because you and I were talking about that game last night. You know, Ashton Daniels threw for a bunch of yards. So it's a weird team. You know, Auburn, you don't know what version of Auburn's going to show up. And you definitely don't know what version of Auburn's going to show up in the Iron Bowl. You know what I mean? And Bama just isn't playing good football. Like, was playing a crappy – like, here's the point. Auburn last week beat a 9-1 FCS team who's got a bye in the playoffs 62-17. Alabama beat a 3-9 FCS team 56-0. You know, like – Bama has not been playing well. Is it going to be enough for Auburn to beat them? I don't know. I would love for that to happen. Auburn's got a very good front. Keldrick Falk is a legit. Auburn can run the football at times. Again, it's the schizophrenic nature of Auburn. They ran for, I'm actually Alabama's numbers. That's not even schizophrenic. They just suck. 277 against Mercer, 210 against Vandy, 230 against Arkansas, 307 against Baylor, then 67 against Oklahoma, 52 against Texas A&M, 118 against Kentucky. It's like, what version of this team is going to show up? If the good version shows up, they can beat Bama. They can. I just don't know if that version is going to show up. You know what I mean? But we'll talk more about it on Friday. But I would say of all the potential upsets that we just talked about, I think the most likely, in my opinion, are Mississippi State over Ole Miss, Washington over Oregon, and Auburn over Alabama. And I don't know that I'd rank the Auburn-Alabama one last.
I get that, man. I mean, this matchup is really, really, really interesting because when we talk matchups, we're talking about a team in Alabama that just literally could care less to run the football. I mean, at this point, I'm amazed that Kalen DeBoer hasn't just came out 5 wide every snap.
They ran it for over 200 yards against Eastern Illinois, man.
They did. And there were a couple Thanksgivings ago where I truck stick my 6-year-old nephew, so I'm not really going to try out for the Colts yet. So, yes, they ran it against an FCS team. I'm not putting a whole lot of weight into that.
You truck stick your 6-year-old nephew at a Thanksgiving football game? What is wrong with you?
Bro, dude, you got to teach him ball. You got to learn at some point. No, but in all seriousness, I am actually fascinated that Alabama just hasn't decided to come out just I am fascinated by the fact that Alabama hasn't just elected to come out and just go 5 wide the entire football game.
Why? Because the running backs are there for pass pro.
Literally. I mean, at that point, I mean, just come out. I mean, it's wild to me. But
Sorry.
No, that was needed the laugh. But
yeah,
the interesting thing, I always talk about what's going to give. And Auburn has the number 11 ranked rush defense in the country, and Alabama has one of the worst rush offenses in the country. Alabama has one of the better, not the best, but one of the better pass offenses in the country, given skilled talent and how much they put into it schematically. Auburn ranks 100th in the country in pass defense.
Yeah.
So what takes the day here? What unit steps up? Is it going to be Alabama's rush offense, or is it going to be Auburn's pass defense? Whichever one of those units step up I think that team wins. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be real interesting to watch on Saturday. But obviously, War Eagle this weekend.
Yeah. I'm very curious to see if the front four for Auburn can have a day. They're undersized, but they're really athletic on the edges.
Very quick hands.
I'm surprised. I'm disappointed how many of our Irish Breakdown members are absolutely on board with you. And VR, if you're going to play that alley, got to be ready to take a hit. Archer, all's fair between the lines. BD, Connor Laws, my younger cousins hate to see me coming to Thanksgiving dinner. Oh, man, that's great. You guys are awesome. Oh, that was such a remarkable comeback, Trevor. Yeah, well, I truck sticked my 6-year-old nephew at Thanksgiving a couple Thanksgivings back. But it is true because it is embarrassing. Like Alabama, it was like almost insulting. You know, the committee says they don't run the ball, so you go out there and it's bad enough you're playing a 3-8 FCS team. Like Eastern Illinois sucks. I mean, they are terrible at football, which is crazy because they used to be really good. But that's a team that went 3-9 this year. You know, like you're Alabama and you're out there running all over that team when you're just completely unwilling to even try to run on anybody else. You know, it's just like, come on, dude. You beat them 56-0 a week after Lindenwood beat them 42-12. You know what I mean? Like you're give me a break. Like
we're talking about
real quick.
We're talking about the same team though that after they beat South Carolina, their media team put out a thing that said that they beat like the number 13th ranked preseason team.
Yeah.
That was also just a crazy post.
Just ridiculous, man.
It's diabolical. Oh man.
This is not Nick Saban's Alabama, that's for sure. But I will absolutely be rooting for Auburn to win this football game.
Absolutely. No. Well, folks, that is going to do it for part 3 of today's show. We are going to wrap up today's show by previewing 3 games that are happening on Friday, and then Vince and Brian on Friday will preview some of the games on Saturday. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell, share this podcast with your friends and family, whatever streaming platform you listen to us on. We would greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, best way to support what we do here, subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.